My parents lived rent-free in my downtown condo. Then they told my boss I was a high-functioning narcissist after I got a promotion. We're just worried about her mental health, Mom said sweetly. A week later, I transferred cities without telling them, and took the keys with me. I'm 37, and until last year, I lived in a downtown condo in Chicago's River North neighborhood. I bought it myself after years of hard work in corporate consulting. It was my reward, my haven, my first real this is mine place. Sleek, clean, organized. Expensive. I chose it for the view, but stayed for the pride I felt every time I came home. Enter my parents. They'd lived in Madison, Wisconsin for nearly 30 years. When Dad had a minor heart issue, they decided it was time to downsize and move closer to me. They sold their house faster than expected, and the condo they planned to buy in Evanston fell through. I offered them my guest space, thinking they'd be with me for a month, maybe 2. Just until we figure things out, Mom said. I knew better. But I still said yes. They moved in like it was their name on the deed. 6 overstuffed suitcases. A fold-out massage table for Dad's back issues. Their dog. A rice cooker. Even their framed wedding photo, on my bookshelf. Within days, the space that once felt calming turned chaotic. My minimalist aesthetic got slowly buried under their clutter, their routines, and their suggestions on how I live my life. Mom reorganized my pantry, you'll thank me later. Dad commandeered my reading chair. They constantly watched cable news at volume 30 while I worked remotely, asking mid-Zoom call if I wanted a banana or something. But I bit my tongue. 4 weeks. Because that's what a good daughter does, right? It wasn't all bad at first. There were a few nice dinners, and some part of me enjoyed being fussed over again. It had been years since we lived under the same roof. I reminded myself that it was temporary. Except it wasn't. 2 months in, I asked gently if they'd had any luck on housing. Mom waved me off. We're narrowing it down. The market's wild, sweetie. You don't want us jumping into something we'll regret, right? She gave me that look, the guilt look. So I let it go. By month 4, they were fully settled. They didn't even pretend to be guests anymore. Mail was being forwarded to my address. Dad had started telling his buddies he lived in Chicago now. Mom had joined a yoga studio a block away. Tippy had claimed my expensive West Elm couch as his throne, and my vacuum was constantly clogged with his wiry fur. I started to feel like a stranger in my own home. And yet, I said nothing. Because I'd been conditioned not to. I'd been the high achiever all my life. The adult who didn't need much. The responsible one. The one who handled things. Mom even called me her little executive. The expectation was clear, I managed. I endured. Even when it hurt. But the day things truly shifted wasn't loud. It was a Wednesday evening in late October. I'd just finished up a 12-hour day at the office when I walked in and found Mom and Dad on speakerphone in my kitchen, laughing with someone. It was Elliot, my regional director. I froze. They didn't notice me standing there at first. My mom was saying something like, she's been like that since high school, go go go, can't relax, always trying to prove something. We worry sometimes, you know? That kind of drive, it's not always healthy. My blood turned cold. When they finally noticed me, Mom smiled, completely unbothered. We were just chatting with Elliot. He's so kind. I asked, stunned, why would you talk to him? Oh, we ran into him at the Mitchells' fundraiser, she said nonchalantly. Lovely event. We just started talking. He asked how you were and I told him the truth. The truth? I said quietly. That sometimes we're concerned, she replied, shrugging. You work so hard. It's a lot. The next day, I got an odd message from HR asking to check in. Elliot had mentioned concerns raised by close family. I almost laughed. Almost. Instead, I cried. My parents had been undercutting me for months, subtly and not so subtly implying I was emotionally unstable, overworked, overly ambitious, framing it as concern. This wasn't just passive aggression anymore. It was wreck. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat in my car in the garage at 2 a.m. with the engine off, just breathing. And thinking. Wondering if I was crazy. Wondering how long this had been happening, and how I hadn't seen it coming. The next morning, I asked for a private meeting with HR. I told them I wanted to apply for an internal transfer, Seattle, if possible. There was an opening. Same title. Slightly more travel. A chance to escape. I said yes on the spot. My move was approved in under a week. The company covered relocation. The logistics happened faster than I could have imagined. I packed quietly, mostly after midnight while they were asleep or out. I told them I had a work retreat out west. I said I'd be gone for 10 days. The night before my flight, I found the spare keys in the ceramic dish by the entryway. I slid them into my bag. I cleared my browser history. I changed the door code. And then I left. No note. No explanation. No argument. Just silence. They were locked out the following Monday. They tried calling, of course. First Mom, then Dad. The calls came rapid fire around noon on Monday. I let them go to voicemail. The first message was light, confused. Callie, it's Mom. The code's not working, did you change it? A small laugh at the end, like maybe it was all a silly mistake. Then another message. Callie, we're outside the building. Can you buzz us in? It's cold and Tippy's shivering. Then Dad's voice. Less amused. Callie, this isn't funny. Where are you? I didn't respond. By the time I landed in Seattle, I had 10 missed calls, 6 texts, and one increasingly frantic voicemail that I listened to alone in the back of the airport taxi. Callie. Please call us. We don't know what's happening. Just, talk to us. But I didn't want to talk. I had just left behind a version of myself I didn't recognize anymore, tense, constantly on edge, polite to the point of suppression, slowly crumbling under the weight of obligations that didn't belong to me. Seattle was gray and damp when I arrived, a world of difference from Chicago's concrete jungle. The sky hung heavy over Puget Sound, and the air tasted clean. I took a deep breath as I stepped into my new apartment, a modest 2-bedroom on the 14th floor in Belltown, with windows that opened and creaked from the salt wind. It wasn't glamorous like River North, but it was mine. Empty. Quiet. No dog fur on the furniture. No passive-aggressive stickies on the bathroom mirror. No one in my reading chair. The silence was sacred. I started work in the Seattle office 2 days later. I was greeted with polite smiles and a box of pens. My new team was smaller, less corporate, and a little more human. The pace was slower. My title remained the same, but I finally had space to breathe. For the first time in years, I felt like I could think without the weight of someone's shadow in the room. Back in Chicago, things were unraveling. I had a neighbor, Maya, a pediatric nurse, who texted me after she bumped into my parents outside the building. Hey Callie, not sure what's going on, but your mom looked shocked. They were outside with Tippy, and she asked if I'd seen you. When I said I thought you moved, she went white. Just a heads up. That confirmed it. They hadn't even entertained the possibility that I might leave them behind. Which told me everything I needed to know. They had assumed that no matter what they did, rearrange my life, wreck my career, use concern as a weapon, I would forgive, forget, and keep accommodating. That I'd swallow it like I always did. Because that's who Callie was, responsible, reliable, rational. They never imagined I'd actually leave. The silence between us stretched. For 2 weeks, nothing. Then I got the letter. It was forwarded to the Seattle office, handwritten in Mom's distinct cursive on pale blue stationery. She'd used her fancy pen, the one she reserved for birthdays and condolences. Dear Callie, we are heartbroken. Truly. We don't know why you've shut us out, but we love you and we're worried. I understand you've been under stress, and maybe you felt overwhelmed. But locking us out of your home and your life, it's not like you. I hope you'll come to see that we were only ever trying to help. Your boss seemed surprised by our concern, not alarmed. Please don't twist our intentions. We raised you to be strong, but you don't have to carry everything alone. Love, Mom and Dad. There was no apology. No ownership. Just an insistence that I had misunderstood them. Typical. I didn't reply. Instead, I started therapy. It felt strange at first, talking to someone about a life I'd kept locked up so tight. But each session was like a window being cracked open. My therapist, a woman named Nora, helped me name things I'd always brushed off: manipulation, enmeshment, emotional control disguised as care. She didn't tell me what to do. But she gave me permission to stop explaining myself. Meanwhile, Mom kept sending texts. Just checking in. Hope you're okay. No idea where you are, but we miss you. We've been sleeping at your cousin's. Tippy isn't eating. He misses you. Each one was a gentle nudge, always implying that I was the unreasonable one, the one causing pain. Never mind that they had triggered all this by invading my boundaries and then planting seeds of doubt at work. Never mind that they weaponized concern in front of the one person who held my professional future. I changed my number. It wasn't spite. It was survival. Without the constant pings, I started sleeping better. I went entire days without my jaw aching from being clenched. I began to write again, nothing major, just journaling, processing. I remembered that I liked listening to jazz at night. I took long walks in Discovery Park and didn't feel guilty for not answering to anyone. My new colleagues never once commented on my personality outside of calling me efficient and calm. No one pulled me aside with faux sympathy. No one whispered, "We're just worried about her." Because there was nothing to worry about. I was fine. Actually, I was better than fine. About a month after I moved, my aunt called me from Madison. She said my parents were confused and really hurting. She wanted me to come home for Thanksgiving. They're devastated, she said. They don't understand why you cut them off like this. I asked her gently, "Did they tell you what they said to my boss?" She hesitated. "No," she admitted. "Then they're not confused. They're pretending." She sighed. "Callie, they're your parents." "I know," I said quietly. "That's the problem." After that call with my aunt, I sat on the edge of my bed for a long time, just holding my phone and staring at the muted notifications. It was strange how quickly the grief came, grief not for them, but for the version of me that had tried so hard for so long to keep the peace. The daughter who had spent her life managing moods, diffusing tension, trying to be understanding. The girl who was taught to believe that forgiveness was the currency of love. She was gone now. In her place stood someone quieter, firmer. Someone who didn't need to make excuses for other people's behavior, no matter who they were. I didn't go to Madison for Thanksgiving. Instead, I spent it with my friend Renata, a colleague turned confidant who made homemade tamales and insisted on lighting a cinnamon candle for the vibe. We drank wine and watched old episodes of Frasier, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel obligated to perform gratitude. Still, I knew the silence from my end wouldn't last forever. They were going to push back harder. And they did. It started with a Facebook post. My mom doesn't usually post much, so when she does, people pay attention. This year, we're thankful for love, even when it's not returned. Sometimes all you can do is hope and pray that people come back to you. Hashtag family, hashtag always, no names, no tags, but the implication was obvious. Within hours, one of my old high school teachers, who still followed her, commented, "Hope everything's okay." Callie always seemed so grounded. I saw it because my cousin forwarded it to me with a warning, "They're trying to spin the narrative." And that's when I realized, they weren't just upset I'd left. They were embarrassed. Because for them, image was everything. They'd told friends they were retired in Chicago, like it was a permanent upgrade, not a burden they'd shifted onto me. They liked the social clout of visiting galleries, of being close to their daughter in the city. They bragged about me when it suited them, but when I asserted myself, when I set a boundary, I was ungrateful. They didn't know what to do with a version of me that wasn't quietly accommodating. So they made it about abandonment. About a daughter who changed after her big job promotion. A daughter who didn't value family. And it worked. I got messages from extended relatives I hadn't heard from in years. Your mom is really hurting. I don't know what happened, but I hope you can forgive. Callie, family is all we have. Don't let your career blind you. Not one of them asked what my side was. Not one. I didn't respond to them either. In Seattle, life continued in a slow, steady rhythm. My team grew comfortable around me. I had a standing Wednesday coffee date with Renata. I started attending a yoga class on Sunday mornings taught by a man in his 60s named Lou who said things like, "Stretch like you're wringing out an old grudge." It felt good to be seen but not surveilled. Still, the ghosts of my parents lingered in small ways. I'd walk past a dog that looked like Tippy and feel a strange mixture of guilt and freedom. I'd reach for my phone automatically at 7 p.m., out of old habit, before remembering there were no calls to return. My therapist, Nora, said something one day that stuck with me. Estrangement from a parent doesn't always start with a blowout. Sometimes, it begins with a realization that you're always giving and they're always taking, and you're finally too tired to pretend that's normal. She said it softly, like she knew I still needed permission. I did. Winter arrived early in Seattle that year. Rainy and raw. My apartment had this old radiator that hissed through the night, and I found myself falling asleep to its rhythm instead of the anxious ticking I used to feel in my chest. Meanwhile, the messages kept coming, but slower now, more calculated. At one point, Mom sent an email. Long overwrought. Filled with emotionally laced phrasing like "after all we've done" and the cruelness of being shut out and "we only ever wanted what's best." It was dramatic. And beneath the surface, furious. But again, no apology. No accountability. Nothing like, "I shouldn't have interfered with your career," or "I crossed a boundary by speaking to your boss without your consent." Just more deflection. More suggestion that I was the problem. That I had changed. That I owed them reconciliation. I archived it. Didn't delete it, just tucked it away where I wouldn't stumble on it again. About 2 months after the move, I ran into a former coworker from Chicago at a conference in Portland. We grabbed lunch, and after catching up on company gossip, she leaned in and said, "By the way, everyone in the office thought what you did was badass." I blinked. What I did? Just, the clean break. The transfer. No drama. You handled it. And Elliot? He kind of figured out your mom was the issue. That made me pause. She nodded. Apparently, she sent him a follow-up email after you left. He didn't even reply. I nearly laughed. It hadn't occurred to me that their behavior might have revealed more about them than about me. That maybe, all this time, I'd overestimated the damage and underestimated my own credibility. I hadn't needed to explain myself. I had just needed to act. After that lunch, something loosened in me. A tension I hadn't even realized I was still carrying. I walked back to my hotel in the drizzling rain and sat with a cup of tea by the window, watching the people rush by below. For the first time in months, I felt deeply okay. Not triumphant. Not vengeful. Just steady. It was enough. Spring came early to Seattle the next year. Trees outside my apartment bloomed in soft pinks and whites, petals catching in the wind like slow confetti. I walked everywhere that season. I'd shed so much, both physically and emotionally, that it felt like my body and mind had synced to the rhythm of renewal. Then, out of nowhere, I got a call from my old building manager in Chicago. "Hi Callie. Sorry to bother you, just wanted to confirm something. Your parents are trying to get into your unit. They showed up asking to be let in. Said they still live there? I nearly dropped my phone. I hadn't heard from them in over 2 months. After Mom's long emotional email, they'd gone silent. I assumed they'd finally accepted it. But apparently not. I asked him if he let them in. Of course not, he said. I checked the lease, still under your name only. No authorization for anyone else. Just figured I'd give you a heads up. I thanked him, heart pounding with a mix of rage and disbelief. What was their plan? Break in? Camp out? Guilt trip the building staff? I was stunned. But I shouldn't have been. They were never going to respect boundaries. Not unless those boundaries had real consequences. I called a lawyer the next day. I had already transferred ownership of the condo to a rental property manager months ago. They handled leasing now, not me. I hadn't wanted to sell outright. Something told me I might want to keep that place as a tangible reminder of what I'd survived. But this latest stunt made me realize it could also be part of my closure. So I made a plan. The unit had been vacant for a while. I'd been holding off on putting it up for rent because I hadn't decided what to do with it. But now? Now, I knew. I flew back to Chicago a week later. Quietly. No announcement. No drama. I didn't even tell anyone I was coming. When I walked into the condo for the first time since I'd left, I stood in the doorway and just breathed. It was still mine. The furniture was gone. I'd asked the property team to clear it out months ago, but the bones were still beautiful. That skyline view? Still incredible. The light? Still golden in the late afternoon. And it was empty. Clean. No signs of them. It felt right. I met with a high-end rental agent the next day. She lit up the second she saw the place. "Oh, we'll get you top dollar for this," she said, tapping on her tablet. "It's a dream location. Perfect for a relocation exec or a long-term corporate rental." I smiled. Perfect. We listed it at a premium price. Within 2 weeks, it was leased to a young French couple moving to Chicago for a 2-year consulting contract. They paid 6 months up front. No dogs. No parents. No drama. Before I flew back to Seattle, I mailed my parents a single envelope. No letter. No explanation. Just a copy of the new lease. A sticky note on top said, "New tenants move in June 1st. Please make sure you're not standing outside the building embarrassing yourselves again." Callie, I heard from my cousin a few days later. She said Mom was beside herself. Dad, apparently, went quiet for hours after opening the envelope. She said, "They thought you might have softened by now. They didn't think you'd go through with it. But I did. And I slept like a baby. I changed the locks, changed the legal access, and closed the chapter for good. No one else would ever live in my space again under the guise of family while slowly dismantling my life." My therapist called it a functional, legal boundary. I called it revenge in escrow. They never got the satisfaction of an apology. They never got a second chance. And most importantly, they never got their narrative back. They had to tell their friends that their daughter kicked them out. They had to explain why they were back in Wisconsin, sleeping in the guest room of my aunt's house like 2 misplaced retirees who burned the only bridge they had left. They lost access, they lost control, and they lost the ability to twist the story in their favor. And I gained everything. Space. Peace. Pride. Autonomy. The final time I heard from them was via a generic Christmas card sent to my office 6 months later. No return address. No note inside. Just a card that read, "Hope you're well. We miss you." I placed it in the shredder. Without a second thought. And then, I took my lunch break early, walked to the cafe near the pier, and ordered my usual. Sat by the window. Watched the water. smiled.